Part 5. The S in the res equation. Now we add spin, which creates a significant increase in GDP. As I've previously said, I can't guarantee we can use spin in this way, but I can't see a reason why we can't either. So instead of this section being a this is how statement, it becomes a is this allowed question. What happens when we change from rolling over initial revenue once a year to rolling it seasonally, once every 3 months? This would have the effect of increasing cash flow and GDP whilst lowering the rollover of initial revenue the following year. I call this action a spin. The following journey is for 2024. If we look at the spreadsheet again and now imagine that the initial revenue of 5.4 billion is now spent in January, February, March, and with an E of 90%, instead of rolling over the next year, it passes the 4.9 billion there and there to network companies to spend in April, May and June. A technical note: in actual fact it would be a little more than 3 months for the first quarter and a little less than 3 months for the last quarter, but let's put that aside for now. We pick up the trail at spin 2 at AK 36 in orange, and we see the 4.9 billion is added to the 2024 initial revenue of 5.4 billion to make 10.4 billion in cash flow. Whereafter at AK 45 there we multiply by my current best estimate for the CGV, the David A. Moss cash flow to GDP variable of 52%, which is my current best estimate of how much GDP is created from the cash flow. For the mechanics of the cash flow to GDP variable, see tabs the Sienna equilibrium 1.06, and we go down the sectors, we go across the allocations to the output allocations, we go down until we find it here. And in the Sienna equilibrium 1.07 we can see it there. One being 66%, the other being 47%, from which I have estimated a 52% accurate, which of course is too low given the 2 examples, but in general it's best to be too low than too high, so I've gone with 52%. This is telling us that on average 52% of goods, services, real estate and other items are produced as complete items that are sold to the public, government, other or are traded, and 48% of cash flow has been spent on services, software, manufacturing parts, construction materials or procuring raw materials and minerals. Therefore in AK 46 the cash flow of 10.4 billion with a CGV of 52%, so sorry, let's just go back there. Cash flow times the CGV gives us the GDP. But why stop there? Continuing to the right in AO 36, let's go here and let's just scroll over a bit. In AO 36 we see the second spin, or in fact the third spin. This time July to September, which creates an additional cash flow of 4.4 for a total cash flow of 14.8 and a GDP of 7.7. Next, at AR 36, we see spin 4, this time October to December, creates additional cash flow of 4 billion. For a total cash flow of 18.9 and a GDP of 9.8, all from an investment of 5.4. The trade-off, of course, is that the more spins, the less initial revenue passes over via the law of conservation of revenue to the next year, which gets eroded away as a factor of E multiplied by S. In this example, initial revenue in 2025 is still substantial at 3.6 billion. There is that figure. which if added to the 2.5 in additional revenue from the Spin 0 2025 example creates 6.1 billion, an increase of 643 million. If, however, come 2024, the additional revenue is predicted much lower, which in any case will be an easy prediction to make as the bulk of it comes from aid and the selling of the first charter city, both of which will have been negotiated or not by that point, then the safest strategy is to either adopt a Spin 0 model in 2024 or try and increase E. The higher the E, the higher the 2024 and 2025 initial rollover will be. We can test this by going back to the master controller at AF4 and change it to 95. But first, check the current value of the additional revenue required in red at AY40. A little bit to the right, there it is. You can see it says 1.89 billion. And now if we change E to 95 and check again, let's do that. We have to go to the top, we go left, there it is, change that to 95, and do remember to change it back because it's easy not to, and then it gets very, very confusing because all the figures will be out. Okay, that's the important thing. It's changed down to just over 1 billion when with an E of 95 as opposed to an E of 90. In addition, an E of 95 changes the rollover from 2024 to 5.2 and lowers the need for additional income if in 2025 if using Spin 0 to only 247 million. Okay, how high can Spin get? The first Angel Theory Res simulation I created started at Spin 8 and went up to Spin 24 by 2039. I created two variations. One that was cautious that allowed a leakage of E5 and one that did not have a leakage, which is called the standard. You can see the two tabs on the spreadsheet. There, cautious, there, standard. Going back to cautious. At CZ49, top left, in red, the cautious version made GDP of 457 billion, which when added to the outer network Malawi GDP created that is done there. There. Creates a 0.35% of global GDP. And in the standard spreadsheet, GDP is, top left, 1.7 trillion, which when added to the outer network Malawi GDP creates 1.29% of global GDP. Now, do not get these simulations confused with myself saying that this is how things are going to be. This is simply me saying that in this scenario, giving these inputs, this is what the current mathematical model shows. However, this model is light years behind the simulation that I can create given the technical assistance to create the software products TBS, BES, VSN and UCS. Total Business Systems, Behavioral Economic Systems, Virtual Social Network and the UCS Simulator. One point that I have thought of recently is whilst it is less elegant, we can have different spins for different sectors. When including delivery times for goods being exported from Malawi, the time it takes to make the trade and send the raw materials, etc. back to Malawi, manufacturing for export sectors demand fewer spins. Whereas construction in Malawi could have more spins, and goods, agriculture and services that can be created and delivered quickly could have many spins. But before we go there, and before I can complete a more creative capitalism, I must find out if spin can be used as prescribed, in part or in full. For all my efforts, I can't break it, but it does not mean it cannot be broken. Summing up, applying spin and making several exchanges within a year increases cash flow and output, but lowers the law of conservation of revenue, rollover from one year to the next. However, if other conditions such as additional revenue are favourable, by raising E and S, huge cash flow and GDP can be created. In addition, E and S can be used to conduct monetary policy. For instance, Malawi finds itself in a groove at maybe E93 and spin 12. Then, when non-network Malawi economy contracts, we can either increase E and S, so increasing cash flow and GDP within the network, or we could lower E to 90% or even less and increase spin to 16 and be happy to lose 5% of initial revenue that year, which will have a very significant effect on the Malawi non-network economy and its neighbours. The effect would be relative to the size of R, but in Malawi and most AGOA countries, a few billion here or there would make a lot of difference and could turn a recession year into a higher than average growth year. I hope this point is not lost on Paul Krugman and the other New Keynesians. For sure, I think it's safe to say that I would not, that if not for the book End This Depression Now, this new application for the res equation would not be. Thank you. Thank you for watching this series of videos on the res equation. More detail is available in the full article, The Res Equation, Your Spending is My Income, which continues with parts 6, AGOA US trade, more detail on that, 7, tax, labour and interest on debt, 8, the first followers, and 9, what if, which looks at more traditional ways to increase money supply should for one reason or another res not be permitted as prescribed. Thank you very much.